The colour wheel of Magic the Gathering: red, green, black, blue, white. These areas each distinctly represent a kind of type of experience, a philosophy, a point of view. In some ways it can actually be translated into a kind of personality wheel. So therein begs the question, does this colour wheel of experience correlate with the colour wheel of experience within CPT? CPT is simply an emergent system of the 8 cognitive functions. You might be familiar with this if you've heard of MBTI, 16 personalities, or have just read a lot of Carl Jung. And in the old days when I was more on the MBTI level, I did try in my own time to compare the colour wheel to the 8 cognitive functions or the 16 personalities, and I never really got anywhere. I was never satisfied with the solution. But at the moment we're in a very different place, because in CPT those 8 cognitive functions, they actually pair together to form 32 different cognitive pairings. And these cognitive pairings, they cluster together to form cognitive networks. And these networks actually go onto a colour wheel of their own. Whereas cognitive functions represent fairly modular ways of processing information, the networks represent ways of experiencing the world. So then I thought there has to be some kind of comparison here, there has to be some kind of connection between the colour wheel of Magic the Gathering and the colour wheel, the networks of CPT. And if any of the concepts I'm throwing around in this video seem confusing, I highly recommend checking out the CPT wiki as well as the CPT Explained playlist over here. So the networks of CPT are Indigo, Amber, Azure, and Emerald. And each of these networks have a kind of elemental property. It doesn't define the entire thing because there's elements within the elements, as we're going to be getting into later. But to get a sense of what each of these networks feels like in terms of human experience, Indigo is like air, Amber, fire, Azure, water, Emerald, earth. So it might surprise you to hear that Indigo, this air-like network property, comprising processes such as NITI and SEFE, which we're going to get into soon, is actually analogous to black within magic, and here's why. So it's easy to mistake black for evil and malice. You curse your enemies and willingly sacrifice your minions. And also, the absence of colour, black, it does carry kind of evil connotations. But the truth is, black isn't actually evil. It's simply entropy, collapse. Philosophically, it's the willingness to strip something away of illusions and to take nothing for granted. Most people build their world on the assumption of rules and categories, whereas black here does the opposite, and as does the cognitive function network of Indigo. Both these frames of mind ask, what if these categories don't hold? What if safety is an illusion? That's terrifying but also liberating, because whereas others cling to frames, Indigo, black, these ways of being tear them down. They burn them to ash. So in terms of cognitive processes, NITI has more of a fire edge within this air-like network. The collapse of individual distinctions, not a frame in itself, but the erasure of them, of flattening everything into a single kind of substance. What if nothing's real? And what is real? Etc. Then SEFE. This has more of an air edge. So it's double air within this network. And this is more about boundary play, teasing the lines of space and body, testing where identity blurs into another, seeing what you can get away with. Whereas SIFI, that has more of a water tint. This is like a kind of limit break. And yes, that's a Final Fantasy reference. This is like dissolving the intrinsic quality of the comfort zone. So as you can see, there's a naturally entropic vibe to these functions. And you may have also noticed when it's more of an introverted thinking process, which is kind of like internal frameworking, generative cognition, it has a kind of fire property. When it's more like extroverted feeling, it's kind of like gamified cognition. What are the rules? Where do the rules bend, etc. With a lot of social, harmonic, musical kind of implications, but not strictly limited to socializing. Then it has a very air-like property. It's about the transmission and the expression. And of course, the contagion. Whereas introverted feeling, this kind of pure affective process, how is the world affecting me? What is meaningful to me? How have experiences formed me? And where do I go from here? This is much more akin to water. Not just because still waters run deep, but because water is adaptive and highly fluid, just like human personality. So now we get to blue. And this can be compared to the network of Azure. So on first impression, blue might look like trickery, illusions, a phase of creatures, smoke and mirrors. But underneath this, the emphasis is upon control, mastery, refinement. It's not intrinsically about deception. It doesn't accept entropy as much as resist it actively, polishing, refining, building buffers, training skills, mastering details, getting something locked down, emphasizing competence, prediction. So in Magic, blue tends to be one of the slow games. Draw cards, hold counters, sculpt inevitability through perfect information. It wins by control, not by brute force. Much like water, it's akin to using the force of the opponent against them. And the Azure network works the same way. It's not about being flashy as much as cultivation. The mask, the identity, the hour of practice. It's all a tower of control, one layer on top of the other. So we have NEFE, the persona. This has, again because of the extroverted feeling, an air tint. Masks here are simply tools, illusions within an ecosystem, shaping how others see you, but also deeply rehearsing internalized skill sets so as to always be competent and always know what you're doing. Never for the sake of trickery, but for simply precision of experience, and also novelty of experience within the algorithm itself, that which makes sense and can be made sense of. NIFI is the identity portion, again FI, so has a water tint to it. So double water within this network. This refines the self into a crafted narrative. This is the archetype I'm stepping into right now. This is the destiny I am projecting into the future with precision and information. Because our identity in NIFI is built upon competence. It's built upon the walk that can be walked. And then we have SETE, and we haven't mentioned TE yet, extroverted thinking. This can be likened to Earth. It's about empiricism, what's actually happening out there, and how everything out there fits together. What is here? What is in world? And for this video, don't worry about extroverted intuition and stuff like that, because within this system, they're just forms of attention. Whether you view the external empirical world like this or like that doesn't change the fact that it's the external empirical world. It's still world. It doesn't matter how you experience it, hence why it exists within 4 different experiential networks. So this is skill through the grind, mastery through repetition, kind of like blue decks chaining cantrips until every line is perfect. So Azure is kind of orthogonal to Indigo, because Indigo collapses categories, whereas Azure kind of exists within them. It exists within matrices, frameworks. There is a system to master. And because there's a system, things can be predicted with accuracy. Predictions are often more deterministic than they are statistical, because everything within Azure, within blue, is precise. This is cognition as precision engineering. One more layer until chaos has no foothold. Now we have red, and this can be likened to the amber network. Red is the easiest colour to stereotype. Chaos, anger, impulse. Yet, red isn't reckless stupidity. It's immediacy. In Magic, red burns fast. Haste, lightning bolt. Direct damage. Its power is speed, intensity in the moment, and it refuses to hesitate. And amber cognition channels this. It doesn't hold back. It doesn't polish. It sparks. Thought as combustion, personality as eruption. It isn't as much careful or systematic, as much as it is raw and unfiltered. But in real life, many amber individuals, they tend to have a mask in front of all of this, in front of this passion, in front of this ambition, in front of the comfort within fiction mentality. Kind of like a red deck player who knows what they're doing. So TESE is assertion, and because of this TE element, extroverted thinking, it has a more Earth-like property within this fiery network. So this is colliding with reality like a hammer strike. Red doesn't so much check the rules as test them by impact. So then we have TISI, critique. TI here gives it a kind of double fire. So this is a razor-sharp process, cutting to the quintessential essence. Like an actual fire, burning theory down to an ember. TISI can see contradictions everywhere, but it also means it's very effective at burning its way to the truth. And then we have FENE, osmosis. Because of the FE component, it has a more air-like property. So this is the wildfire side of red. Social contagion, culture, catalyst. Underlying this is a kind of furnace that fully locks in an internal system, a sense of discipline, progress over time, doing what you have to do in order to make it to your goal. Amber is present in the spark of now. There's this underlying impatience to the network. So whereas Azure grinds, red erupts. Whereas Emerald trusts the cycle, red breaks it open. A very willful network. So fans of CPT may currently be wondering why I'm missing certain functions, and I'm going to get to that real soon. But before that, let's dive into the Emerald network, because this is the green comparison. Green looks simple: forests, nature, life. But beneath this is something deeper: inevitability. Because green doesn't force outcomes, it trusts cycles. Growth, interdependence, systems that are bigger than one person. And above all things, growth. In Magic, green is monoramp, overwhelming creatures, synergies that scale with time. Its power is ultimately patience. You can't stop a forest growing, only delay it. And Emerald cognition mirrors that. It doesn't push for one spark. It thinks in whole ecosystems. It trusts process, not ego. It digs deep for the underlying principle. So first we have TENE, ecosystem. And this is here double earth because of the TE element. Building systems, structures, communities, much as the green deck's ramp strategy. Building towards inevitability. Maintaining the land as it grows to become more and more powerful and usable. Then we have TINI, innovation. So the TI here gives it more of a fire edge. So this is seeing the hidden systemic laws, cycles that people might miss. Higher level emergent properties. And then we have FISI, growth. The FI here gives it a water property. So this is finding nourishment in continuity, values lived as seasons and cycles. The iterated self. Emerald here is green's lesson. No individual spark matters more than the system itself. Where amber burns, green roots. Where indigo collapses, green restores. This is cognition as ecology, wisdom that endures because it belongs to the whole. So now we enter white. So in Magic, white is law, order, society, armies, equilibrium. But here within the cognitive domain, the domain of lived experience, white doesn't quite fit that mold. Again, I would argue these are just surface level properties behind a deeper, much more interesting philosophy. Because instead of rigid hierarchy, I would argue it is paradox, but a truer sense where two competing truths are held together simultaneously, where ambiguity is lived within. Because this is the essence of distillation, and this is the only real route to purity. It's the colour of paradox. Many colours forming together to create white. The strange fifth pillar that holds tension as its own form of power. And this is actually where the remaining 4 out of 16 functions goes. Because for every single network, there is a function elementally opposed to it, yet seemingly existing within it. And this causes a kind of elemental tension. First we have FESE, synchrony, paladin-like rhythm, grace in alignment, but through motion rather than command. Through seeking the universal principle, through finding the common tone, but holding to tension all the way throughout the process. Then we have FINI, transformation, whereas FESE was the odd one out within the Emerald network, air within earth. FINI is the odd one out within the Amber network, water within fire. Desire purifying essence, a paradox of will, reshaping value. Because everything is always transforming, and the person you were yesterday is not necessarily the person you are now. What you wanted yesterday isn't necessarily what you want now. To the extent that you may struggle to even conceive of yourself having thought differently to how you feel right now. Then we have SITI, essence, exploring the spaces in between, reduction to distilled symbols, life within the process itself, kind of akin to the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, beauty within imperfection. And whereas SITI is fire within the water network, NETE is earth within the air network, TE within indigo. And this is like trans-contextualization. It's the inability to prioritize one thing over the other that forces everything to exist alongside each other, holding multiple different conflicting paths at the same time, holding to the tension until these two things that are conflicting, until these multiple things that are conflicting, suddenly blend into one, into a state of purity. So Mercurial white, it looks like order, but it's surprisingly subversive. In magic, its own paradox is martyrdom. Win by losing, equalize by pulling everyone down to the same level, stall until inevitability. And in cognition, it's the same. Paradox as method. Contrary to the surface level of your everyday magic card, white is actually quite exotic. It doesn't play fair, because it's tension made into power. Internal conflict, ensuing external purity. Order through tension. So here's the full map. Indigo collapses. Azure refines. Amber ignites. Emerald grows. And white contains paradox. It's actually quite accurate to see white as prisons and bars, because these are the actual containers of tension. These are the containers in which opposites collide. So black isn't evil, it's entropy. Blue isn't trickery, it's control, refinement. Red isn't stupidity, it's immediacy, passion, will. Green isn't naivety, it's inevitability. And white isn't just law, it's paradox. So this is cognition in colour. 5 ways of thinking. 5 elemental stances towards reality, each with its own shadow, its own truth. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching this video. So, as many of my core audience will know, I'm currently running a Kickstarter, and it's currently over 300% funded, which is absolutely amazing, and I'm so grateful to everybody who has pledged. And this is all for funding CPT, not just the new book, which reached its funding goal pretty early, but also a brand new chapter, a revamp of the website, new online tests, a brand new tool I've been working on. Just one of many ways of using this system to enhance our lives, enrich our experience. And relative to, of course, how much further the campaign progresses, there are more stretch goals, as of yet unannounced. If I'm being completely honest, I didn't expect the campaign to do as well as it has already. And with over 20 days to go, I'm actually excited to see just how much further we can push this. And if you've wandered into this video entirely new to the system but you liked what you heard, this is a perfect opportunity to check it out. Even if you're just curious, the Kickstarter campaign page includes a full breakdown of what CPT is and why it's worth looking into. And it may even pique your interest enough to purchase the new book. And again, more about that on the page. So being in the middle of a big campaign, easily the biggest project I've ever undertaken in CPT, which is over the last 6 years of my life, I am uploading more frequently. So expect to see me again next week. But for now, take care.